Dry Hollow, Colorado Territory. Winter, 1882. The wind howls like a widow's lament, slicing through the brittle air, carrying the scent of frost and pine. The stagecoach lurches into town, wheels grinding against frozen mud, late again. Dust swirls low, clinging to the earth as if it knows no one here welcomes newcomers. The townsfolk barely glance up. Another coach, another day. But today, the door swings open, and Clara May steps down, her breath catching in the cold. Her dark blue traveling gown hugs her curves too tightly, the bodice straining across her full chest, seams tugging at her hips. A tear at the neckline betrays the long, bruising journey from Philadelphia. Her cheeks burn red from the wind, lips cracked. But her eyes, sharp, unyielding, scan the street with a fire that defies the chill. She's no delicate Eastern flower, though her button boots and fine lace trim might fool you from a distance. Up close, she's a woman who's carried too much for too long, her body a map of resilience, every curve a quiet rebellion against the world's expectations. She stands alone on the platform, carpet bag clutched tight as Amos Beard approaches. He's clean-shaven, polished, the banker's son who sent for her, promised her a life. His eyes rake over her, lingering on the swell of her breasts, the frayed hem of her sleeve. His lips tighten. "Miss Clara," he says, voice clipped, "this won't do. You're not what I expected." The words cut, sharp as the wind. He wanted modest, refined. Not her. Not this woman whose presence fills the space, whose hips sway slightly as she shifts her weight, drawing whispers from the widow, sweeping her stoop across the street. Clara's jaw tightens, but she doesn't flinch. "I crossed half a country for you," she says, voice low, steady. Amos shrugs, embarrassed, and turns away, his father's shadow pulling him back to the bank. She's left there, abandoned, her heart pounding beneath that too-tight bodice, the townsfolk's stares crawling over her skin. She sits, hands folded, chin high, refusing to break. And then, from across the street, Jeb Harlan watches. His broad shoulders strain under a worn duster, his limp betraying an old war wound. He's a man who's lost too much to care for town gossip. But something about her, her defiance, her quiet shame, stirs him. He steps forward, boots heavy on the dirt, and offers her a way out. What kind of man takes in a woman the world has cast aside, and what price will they both pay for it? If this story's pulling you in, drop a like, let us know where you're listening from, and hit subscribe to ride this trail with us. Jeb Harlan's wagon creaks along the frozen trail, the mule's breath steaming in the fading light. Clara May sits beside him, her carpet bag wedged between her boots, the borrowed duster he offered swallowing her frame. It smells of pine smoke and leather, a faint trace of him. She pulls it tighter, her curves softened under its weight, but the wind still bites through the seams. Neither speaks. The silence isn't heavy, just there, like the snow dusting the pines. Clara steals a glance at Jeb, his broad hands steady on the reins, his gray-blue eyes fixed on the horizon. His beard is thick, his hat low, but she notices the way he shifts, favoring his bad leg. A man used to pain, she thinks, and wonders what else he carries. The cabin comes into view at dusk, a squat, sturdy thing at the edge of a clearing, smoke curling from its chimney. It's not much. Patched roof, a small barn, a stack of firewood under canvas, but it feels like a world apart from Dry Hollow's judging eyes. Jeb helps her down, his grip firm, calloused, but not lingering. Inside, the air is warm, the stove glowing faintly. A single cot sits in the corner, a wool blanket folded sharp. A rifle leans by the door. Everything is spare, lived in, but empty of softness. Clara hangs the duster on a peg, her torn dress catching the firelight, the neckline slipping to reveal a glimpse of her collarbone. She tugs it back, cheeks warming, but Jeb doesn't look. He's already at the stove, pulling out a pot. "You can help," he says, voice low, like it's been unused too long. She nods, stepping beside him, her shoulder brushing his as she reaches for a knife. They work in quiet. Beans, potatoes, a simple stew. Her hands, soft from city life, fumble at first, but she learns fast. When she nicks her thumb, he hands her a rag without a word. They eat in silence, spoons scraping tin, her posture straight, refusing to seem small. He offers her the cot. She insists on the floor by the stove. He doesn't argue, just settles into a chair, his bad legs stretched out. The fire pops. Outside, the wind howls. "You live out here alone?" she asks, breaking the quiet. "Yeah," he says. A pause. "Why'd you bring me here?" He shrugs. "You needed somewhere." Her name comes later. Clara. His, Jeb. It's enough for now. Morning breaks cold. The sky a flat gray. Clara wakes to coffee and oats. Jeb already moving outside. She pulls on his canvas trousers and flannel shirt. Too big but warm. The fabric brushing her skin as she steps into the snow. Her breath catches at the chill, but she follows him to the barn. He hands her a pitchfork. "Stalls," he says. She nods, her hands blistering fast but her pace steady. They work through the day. Hay, fences, feed sacks. Jeb doesn't praise, but he doesn't correct her either. She holds gates, passes nails, keeps up. By midday, they sit outside the barn, sharing jerky from a cloth pouch. Her hair is loose, strands clinging to her sweat-damp neck, the flannel clinging softly to her curves as she leans to grab water. Jeb's eyes flicker there, just once, then away. She notices but says nothing. The silence shifts, not empty anymore. Days pass in this rhythm. Work, meals, firelight. Clara's hands toughen, her movements surer. She stops flinching at coyote calls in the night. Jeb's limp is worse in the cold, but he never complains. She watches him, learning the weight of his losses. A brother to fever, a wife to childbirth, a leg to war. He doesn't speak of it, but the cabin holds their ghosts. A second cot, folded. A worn spot on the porch rail. Clara doesn't ask, and he doesn't tell. But when she stirs stew and he mends a boot, their elbows brush, and neither pulls away. She catches him watching her once, as she bends to haul water from the creek, her shirt pulling tight across her chest, a bead of sweat tracing down her throat. His jaw tightens, but he turns back to his work. Something unspoken simmers, fragile but growing. One night, the air feels different, warmer, heavier. The fire burns low, casting shadows across the cabin. Clara sits on her bedding, brushing out her hair, the loose waves falling over her shoulders. Her shift is thin, clinging to her skin in the heat, the fabric outlining the soft curve of her hips. Jeb is nearby, fixing a harness, his hands steady but his eyes flickering to her. She feels it, the weight of his gaze, not like Amos's cold judgment, but something deeper, hungrier. She stands, moving to the stove to stir the coals, her movements slow, deliberate, the shift slipping to bare one shoulder. She doesn't fix it. Jeb sets the harness down, his chair creaking as he rises. He steps closer, close enough that she feels the heat of him. Her breath catches. "Clara," he says, voice rough, low. She turns, her eyes meeting his, her lips parted. His fingers graze her wrist, sending a shiver through her. She steps nearer, her chest brushing his, the space between them vanishing. His hand slides to her waist, firm, pulling her gently closer. Her fingers trace the edge of his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath. Their breaths mingle, her lips hovering near his, the air thick with want. Her hand slips under his shirt, brushing something small, cold, a locket tucked against his chest. It falls open in her fingers, revealing a faded tintype of a woman, her face soft, haunting. Jeb freezes, his breath catching, eyes darkening with a pain older than Clara. She pulls back, the locket dangling between them, the moment shattered by the ghost of his past. He steps away, jaw tight, tucking the locket back without a word. Clara's heart races, her body still humming with unspent desire, but the weight of his silence presses down. She lies down, staring at the ceiling, the fire's glow fading. Who was she, and what hold does she still have on the man who saved her? The locket lingers in Clara's mind, its weight heavier than the cold mornings that follow. She doesn't ask about the woman in the tintype, and Jeb doesn't offer. The cabin's rhythm holds, work, fire, silence, but something's shifted. Clara moves through chores, with steady hands, pitching hay, mending fence wire, her borrowed flannel loose, but catching on her curves as she bends. Jeb's eyes follow her now, not always turning away. She feels it, a pull, like a tide, but the locket's shadow keeps her guarded, her past. Amos's rejection, her stepfather's disdain, whispers she's not enough. Yet Jeb's quiet respect, his lack of demands, chips away at that doubt. One afternoon, under a sky heavy with coming snow, they repair a sagging corral post. Clara holds the beam steady, her breath clouding, her cheeks flushed from cold. Her shirt slips, bearing the curve of her neck, a bead of sweat despite the chill. Jeb's hammer pauses mid-swing, his gaze tracing her skin before he catches himself. "You're strong," he says, voice low. She meets his eyes. Had to be. He nods and they work on, but the air hums with what's unsaid. At supper, their knees brush under the table. Neither moves away. Clara's heart races not from fear, but from something new. Want, mixed with trust. That night, a rider's hooves break the quiet. Jeb grabs his rifle, stepping onto the porch as Clara follows, her pulse quickening. It's Cooper, the town deputy, his badge glinting in the moonlight. "Harlan," he calls, "that girl's causing trouble." Amos Beard's saying she owes him. Ticket, letters, his pride. Clara steps forward, chin high. "I owe him nothing." Jeb's voice is steel. "She's staying. Tell Beard to keep his distance." Cooper hesitates, eyes flicking to Clara's figure, then rides off. The threat hangs like smoke. Clara's hands tremble, not from cold, but from the sting of being claimed like property. Jeb turns to her. "You're not his." She nods, but fear coils. Will Amos come himself? Back inside, Jeb stokes the fire, his movements tense. Clara watches, her voice soft. "Why stand for me?" He pauses, eyes on the flames. "Seen too many left behind. Won't let it happen again." Her throat tightens. She steps closer, her hand grazing his arm. He doesn't pull away. The fire crackles, but another sound, a low, distant thud, cuts through. Jeb's head snaps up, rifle in hand again. Clara's breath catches. Someone's out there, closer now, and the night feels alive with danger. Is it Amos? Or something worse, coming to tear them apart? The night after the deputy's visit, the air in Jeb Harlan's cabin feels taut, like a bowstring pulled too tight. Clara moves quietly, washing tin plates, her hands steady, but her eyes darting to the door. The distant thud they heard lingers in her mind. Boots, maybe, or something heavier, stalking the ridge. Jeb sits at the table, cleaning his rifle, his broad hands methodical, but his jaw is set, betraying the storm beneath his calm. Clara's borrowed shirt hangs loose, yet it clings to her curves as she leans to set a plate down, the firelight catching the soft swell of her hips. Jeb's eyes lift, just for a moment, then return to the rifle. The locket's ghost still hangs between them, unspoken, but the pull of their near kiss keeps the air alive with want. Outside, the wind dies, leaving a silence too deep for comfort. Clara's drying her hands when Jeb's head snaps up, his grip tightening on the rifle. "Stay here," he says, voice low, and steps onto the porch, the door creaking shut behind him. Clara's heart kicks hard. She knows that silence, the kind that hides trouble. She grabs a kitchen knife, its weight unfamiliar but sure in her calloused palm, and peers through the window. Shadows shift beyond the corral, too deliberate for deer. Jeb's silhouette moves toward the barn, limping but steady, rifle raised. Then a flicker of light, a lantern swaying in the dark, followed by the low murmur of voices. 2, maybe 3 men. Clara's breath catches. She slips the knife into her waistband and pulls on Jeb's duster, its weight grounding her. She steps outside, ignoring his order, her boots crunching on frost. The cold bites her cheeks, but she moves toward the barn, keeping low. Jeb's voice cuts through the dark, sharp and controlled. "Beard, you got no business here." Amos Beard steps into the lantern's glow, his polished coat absurd against the rough pines. 2 hired men flank him, their hands resting on pistols. "She's mine, Harlan," Amos says, voice slick with entitlement. "Paid for her fair and square." Clara's stomach twists, but she steps forward, her shadow falling beside Jeb's. "I'm no one's," she says, her voice clear, cutting through the night. Amos laughs, but it's brittle. "You think this cripple can keep you?" Jeb's rifle doesn't waver, but his eyes flick to Clara, a silent warning to stay back. She doesn't. Her hand hovers near the knife, her body tense, the duster slipping slightly to reveal the curve of her shoulder in the moonlight. One of Amos's men notices, his gaze lingering too long, and Jeb steps closer to her, protective, possessive, without a word. "Turn around," Jeb says to Amos, "or you won't ride out." Amos smirks, but his men shift, uneasy. The tension crackles like dry kindling. Then it breaks. One of the hired men draws, fast, but Jeb's faster. A shot rings out, the man's pistol flying from his hand, blood blooming on his sleeve. He stumbles back, cursing. Amos's face pales, but he holds his ground, his own gun half drawn. Clara moves instinctively, stepping between Jeb and Amos, her knife flashing in the lantern light. "Enough," she says, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Amos's eyes narrow, raking over her, but he sees the steel in her gaze. He spits into the dirt. "This ain't over, Harlan." He mounts up, his men following, their horses kicking up snow as they retreat into the dark. Jeb lowers his rifle, his breath heavy, eyes still scanning the ridge. Clara's hand shakes as she sheathes the knife, her body humming with adrenaline and something deeper. Jeb's stand for her, his refusal to let her be claimed. She turns to him, their eyes locking, the space between them charged with unspoken need. "You didn't have to do that," she says, voice low. He steps closer, his hand brushing her arm, warm despite the cold. "Yes, I did." The words carry weight, not just for tonight, but for all the nights he's been alone. They move back to the cabin, shoulder to shoulder, but as they reach the porch, a faint rustle comes from the trees. Too close, too deliberate. Jeb's grip tightens on the rifle. Clara's heart pounds. Someone's still out there, watching, waiting. Who's coming for them now? And will the cabin still be a sanctuary by dawn? Dawn breaks over Jeb Harlan's ranch, the first light spilling gold across the frost-kissed valley. The rustle in the trees was nothing, just a fox, fleeing the coming day. But the night's tension lingers in Clara's tight shoulders as she stands on the porch, Jeb's duster draped over her. Inside, Jeb sets his rifle down, his limp heavier from the cold and strain. Amos Beard's retreat feels like a pause, not an end. But Clara's no longer the woman who sat broken on Dry Hollow's platform. Her hands, once soft, now bare calluses from pitchforks and wire. Her heart, once bruised by rejection, beats steady beside a man who saw her worth. They don't speak of the locket or the woman it holds. Instead, Clara kneels by the stove, stirring coals, her patched dress hugging her curves, no longer hidden in shame. Jeb watches, his gray-blue eyes softer now, the scowl he once wore replaced by quiet peace. He crosses to her, kneeling despite his bad leg, and sets a small box in her hands. Inside, a simple silver ring gleams, no flourish, just truth. "This is yours," he says, voice rough but sure. "If you'll stay." Her eyes sting, but she slides the ring on, her fingers brushing his. "I already have," she whispers. Weeks later, spring's first green creeps across the hills. Clara's belly aches with early signs of life, a secret she shares with Jeb one evening as they lean against the porch rail, his arm around her waist. He pulls her close, his beard grazing her temple. No words needed. The cabin's no longer a refuge for one. It holds 2 mugs on the shelf, her dress beside his coat, their boots by the fire. Amos's shadow fades. Dry Hollow's whispers don't reach here. Clara's curves, once scorned, fill this home with pride. Jeb's scars, once a wall, now map a man who's chosen to live again. As the sun dips, painting the sky in embers, they stand together, hands entwined, the ring catching the last light. This valley, harsh and unforgiving, has become their redemption, a place where worth isn't measured by others' eyes, but by the quiet vows they keep. If this story stirred you, drop a like, tell us where you're listening from, and subscribe for more tales of hearts forged in the wild.